It's 9 o'clock. Do you know where your memes are? We at Destroy All Clickbait will guide you through the jungle of cyberspace and point out the poisonous and rash-inducing species of the post-capitalist pixelscape. As I'm Adam, with me as always are Ing and Avi. And hello. So, getting right into it, as we were just about to do, we're looking at the... Ing has a term for it. Ing, would you like to tell us the term you've invented here?
Yes, I believe Avi had in a segment that we're going to call Not-traversy.
Yeah, very good. I like it. Yeah. And it is?
It is.
What is the Not-traversy about?
Henry Cavill is not going to be Superman anymore in the DC movie universe.
Right. Because that is... I see, now, it's weird how everyone's... There's two things that are weird about this. One is, I kind of thought they announced that, like, last week, and somehow everyone's catching up with it. But maybe it was just a rumor last week.
It might have been a rumor, because I know The Witcher was announced maybe last week, or if not the week before. So it's possible that they were trying to figure out the two things, and then it was like, we can't figure it out! So now they're like, he's not gonna be in the movies. So, that might be what it is.
Alright, makes sense. But the other thing to me that's funny is just, I was going to tweet this and it just occurs to me, just everyone is dragging the hell out of DC now and going like, well, that sure didn't work, ha ha ha, oh, DC doesn't know what it's doing, DC blah blah blah. But I see every indication this is part of righting the ship. Nothing against Henry Cavill, I don't think he was the problem.
No.
But I think this is part of the shakeup that they're going, that because they do realize it's not working and they're trying to fix it, basically.
Yeah, but it is the final admission to, it's flatlined.
We done bad.
Yeah.
We done bad.
Right.
Let's fix. Because, like, I think with the reaction to the Shazam trailer is a good indication that, like, okay, maybe the grimdark thing isn't what we should be doing.
Right.
So,
because it seems like everything they've got coming up is pretty lighthearted. Like, Aquaman does not look too grim and gritty. I know the Wonder Woman sequel is going to be set in the 80s, and it looks like it's much more light than the first one.
Right, which wasn't a particularly dark movie, by all accounts. It wasn't the brightest movie, but it wasn't properly grimdark either, in my opinion.
Yeah, they were lightening it up a little, but it was still like, it was kind of a bleak and muggy.
Well, it was World War One. It's hard to do a positive spin on World War One.
I have to admit, I am still kind of disappointed we didn't get, like, a decade earlier, so we could just have, like, Wonder Woman in Studio 51 or whatever it was called.
Oh my god. Yeah.
just staying alive, but with Wonder Woman.
They should have said it in 1977, actually. That would have been best. Yeah. So the theory everyone's having about the fact that it's set in the 80s is that they want to do... they want to make it about the Cold War. Just as she was in World War One, now she's in the Cold War, and she's going to be stopping the Cold War single-handedly this time, or whatever she's going to be doing. But yeah, like that's the... And I mean, you could do the Cold War in the 70s too, though.
I was going to say, like, technically you could do the Cold War at any point in time after World War II, so... Yeah.
But hey, Stranger Things is hot, so we gotta cash in on the 80s. Is probably the thing.
Yeah, that's probably the actual mindset, is that, like, we're having all this nostalgia stuff for the 80s and 90s, so we should do all the stuff for the 80s and 90s.
And it's funny that Chris Pine is coming back for that. I have there's a guy on Twitter who's very good. You should follow him. His name's Volondar at VK_HM is his Twitter feed. But he says he said earlier today, so Star Trek might be losing Chris Pine. DC wrote Chris Pine out by killing him in Wonder Woman, but now they keep bringing him back, and then they wrote Henry Cavill back in, but they lost him. So Chris Pine and Henry Cavill are both playing round robin right now with all kinds of weird things.
Just a little bit, but nah. They're two personalities that I don't really care about in comparison to, like, all of the other millions of personalities that are in these superhero movies at this point. So it's just kind of like, Well,
but Chris Pine was good. He was a good part of Wonder Woman, I thought. Don't you think?
Yeah, no, he wasn't bad by any means, but it's also just kind of like, well, So is he going to be playing his own son or something now?
Yeah.
That's weird.
I've seen people...
Are they going to make his character also the DC movie version of Resurrection Man? Like it's just gonna be a thing that he dies in each movie and comes back?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if her villain is... Actually, I think the villain in this one's the cheetah, so I don't know what kind of weird supernatural thing would be happening that might bring him... Because I'm pretty sure he is playing Steve Trevor again.
Huh.
Like, it is specifically Steve Trevor come back somehow, and I think that's about
don't know enough about the cheetah, unfortunately, so...
Steve Trevor? I thought you died. I didn't!
And also, I didn't age for 70 years,
yeah.
apparently. No, it was...
I want that to be the only answer. He just angrily says no. And with just such a tone that it's clear that there are no follow-up questions. Welcome.
Just no!
This topic. I thought you died. No!
No. Why is there a watermelon there? I'll tell you later. That's why I died. But I've heard people argue convincingly that, you know, Steve Trevor is to Wonder Woman as Lois Lane is to Superman, and he's kind of important to the mythos because he's the he's the mortal who loves the demigod.
Yeah.
And he sort of represents the best of humanity that Wonder Woman is fighting for, just the way Lois Lane represents the best of humanity that Superman is fighting for, and that they love them. And also, I always found it interesting that both Lois Lane and Steve Trevor are like characters who could, like, they're essentially action heroes, adventure heroes of the time, but without the superhero stuff.
Yep.
But then they have a boyfriend or girlfriend, respectively, who is the next level beyond that. But they can absolutely support their own stories if they had to, because they're, he's a fighter pilot and she's a reporter, and those were both common sort of adventure protagonists in that era. And even beyond. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, I would say that's less so for Diane and Steve in comparison to Clark and Lois, because there's never really been a version of Clark that didn't have Lois there. And with Diane, they've played around with Steve a little bit, but they've definitely done versions of Diane that didn't have Steve as a focal point. So, yeah.
That's true. That's true. But he's basically been there more or less. Like, he was in the original Golden Age comics.
Yeah.
He keeps coming back. So
yeah.
It's not...
They keep using him, but I wouldn't say that he's the same sort of constant in comparison to Lois Lane, who is always... pretty much always in the Superman comics.
But I think you can argue that Wonder Woman has lost her way once or twice over the years. Like, she became a kung fu super
and it just comes down to shitty writing most of the time, if I'm honest. And that could be true about any superhero character, let's be fair. So
for sure. But I mean, Wonder Woman, like, Superman's always basically been Superman. Wonder Woman became a kung fu secret agent who fought a Frankenstein for a while in the 60s.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't,
okay, but where did it go wrong?
Fair enough. Fair point. Yes. Maybe not wrong, but it was a different character anyway.
Yeah, so they tried to modernize her in ways that didn't really make sense. Because they didn't want to lose her as a character because of contract reasons, I believe. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, it was the 50s, and it was very much, as people said, if they thought to maybe stretch out and get, like, a female writer, maybe it might have actually been good. But it was being written by dudes, and by Robert Kanigher, I believe, is the guy who wrote Wonder Woman the most in the Silver Age, and he was just a throw everything at the wall and see what sticks kind of writer, from what I understand.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie, though, one of Wonder Woman's biggest problems is less of a rogues gallery, or at least a recognizable one, and if they had just kept up fucking Kung Fu Frankenstein, that would have helped.
Yeah, I will fully admit that she does not have an iconic villain the way Superman and Batman both do. Kind of, in certain ways, to the detriment, because I do think the Joker is stupidly overplayed at this point, but...
Well, Batman has, like, 800 bad guys.
Exactly, so it's okay for Batman, but Clark will always have Lex, no matter what.
Right.
Like,
and I think Superman has an underrated rogues gallery personally. And
Oh, yeah.
Flash has a bunch.
Yeah.
And Wonder
Here's the thing that I made it, where Superman sometimes seems like he's lacking. Superman does not have a strong B ranking supervillains. He has he has a couple strong A ranking ones.
right.
Like a very iconic visible, and a couple of ones that are obscure but fan favorites, but's lacking the good, like, middle ground, where, like, with Batman, there is just representation across the spread.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm always, to me, I'm weird in that the Superman that really got me into Superman was the animated series,
Okay.
which people don't like as much as Batman or the Justice League cartoon, but I really like the animated series. And I think they did a really good job with this Rogues Gallery on that. They had...
it's been a while since I've watched it, but I don't remember not liking it, so there's that.
Well, like, they made Toyman great. Like, their version of Toyman was amazing and very creepy, honestly. They created Livewire, who's a really good new character who never really got her due anywhere else, but on the show they treated her well. They did a really good job with Parasite, who's a so I would argue he was, and of course they had Mxyzptlk and Bizarro. Whether you count them as even villains, I don't know. They're more annoyances than anything in some ways. But I think they had a strong bench in the way they handled them in the animated series. And their version of Metalo, I don't know if you'd consider him an A or a B or a C lister, but
I'd put Metallo as actually he's one of Superman's few Bs.
Yeah.
Like, he fits that good category. Like, I would say that the A ones are the ones that you associate as, like, arch nemesis, and they're gonna lead, like, big arcs. And then the C stories are people who can fill, like, can fill filler stories or short fluff stories, and the Bs are somewhere in between them.
Right.
Or, and then you have, like, the Ds that are, like, the really obscure or gag ones.
Right.
There's some weird ones there.
Like, D rank is where you get, like, Condiment King.
Who's a Batman villain. Well, what about Titano the Super Ape? Where does he fall? Is he a B, C, or D?
Huh. See, I'm put on the spot there. In terms of, like, obscurity, I would put D.
Right.
And in the sense, and also in the sense that there's not too many stories you can tell with Titano the Super Ape.
No, that's true.
Like,
you can tell one, and it's basically Superman versus King Kong.
Yeah,
which is clearly what they had in mind when they created it.
And it's that he sort of fills the role of, like, what is it, the ice giant, or the comet giant from the classic Superman one of, like, the giant alien trapped in the comet and everything.
Okay.
That it fills the role of, like, this is kind of a one-shot monster.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
But going back to Wonder Woman's Rogue Gallery, somebody actually posted up a bunch of them, and it's just kind of like, while I recognize most of those names, a lot of people would not recognize any of them, especially in comparison to Batman or Superman, who in all likelihood probably predominated the kind of media sphere that Wonder Woman unfortunately hasn't. Like, people know of Wonder Woman, but they don't know what she fights for or who she has actually fought. Unlike Batman or Superman, people can at least name one, if not two or three of their villains, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I think Cheetah is the most recognizable due to the Super Friends.
Correct.
Right.
Cheetah, and then maybe Ares if they've watched enough of Justice League Unlimited.
Well, and the movie.
And the movie.
Yeah, and the movie as a result. But prior to the movie, those would be the main two that most people could probably name, if that, whereas people can pretty much rattle off everything from every single Batman movie, and that would still work. And
to the point that Lego Batman literally did that as a joke.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's right.
So
these are all real. Look them up.
While it's not that she doesn't have a good rogues gallery, she doesn't have an iconic one that people will necessarily remember, and that might change over the next few years, just because she is getting that traction now.
Yeah, I would argue that a lot of people didn't know, like, if you weren't a comic book reader until about 1977, you might not know that much about Superman. You probably knew what he looked like, you knew the general deal, but you might not have even known, like, his origin, or you might not have known, the movie really cemented a lot about Superman.
Right.
And Wonder Woman, the only media up till now was the Linda Carter show, and a lot of people have never even seen that.
Or they've seen, little clips of it, which is mostly just her transforming. So...
Right, and as far as I know, they didn't cement a whole mythology with that, with the show. So that's part of why. And like Batman had 1966 Batman to cement all the villains and all that. So it's like we can say, oh, Wonder Woman's comics never created blah blah blah. But I mean, in a real sense, Batman's comics weren't. It was just that he had a show very early on that cemented him in the popular consciousness, and then Superman had a movie. Right. So it's now that we're finally getting the Wonder Woman movies, we are cementing her villains and everything.
Exactly.
Yeah. And there's nothing inherently wrong with it. Like, again, a lot of Superman's villains, and even Batman's villains, they're pretty stupid, really.
Oh, yeah,
but they got
totally.
tweaked and you work on them. Like, Lex Luthor was kind of dumb, arguably, until John Byrne really worked him up and made him really iconic. Brainiac was... I like him, but let's face it, he's silly. The Silver Age Brainiac is pretty silly, but now he's become this really effective villain. So it's like all those... And, like, I think Ares is actually... the movie did okay with him, but I mean, he makes sense as Wonder Woman's villain because he is the symbol of war. He's kind of a symbol of the patriarchy. He's tied to Greek mythology. There's a lot of logical things that make him a good villain for Wonder Woman.
Right.
So
it's just kind of weird because as far as the DC Trinity goes, you have these three characters and you think they all have equal billing, but at the end of the day, Wonder Woman has just not had as much attention compared to Superman and Batman, and that's part of the reason why her Rogue Galleries, quote-unquote, sucks. It doesn't actually suck, it's just that not enough attention has been put towards it, that's all.
Yeah, I would actually say in terms of kind of should be A-listers, but they're not in enough of the public knowledge to, get there. Probably Dr. Psycho and Giganta should definitely be listed as that, because they are very good persistent villains.
Right.
Giganta, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. And,
which the chat is going nuts that we forgot to mention Giganta.
Well, in particular, one person is going nuts for very specific reasons, which I will not get into.
Yeah, when you've got a character like, because that's the thing, isn't Giganta's origin that she was like a monkey and got turned into a giant cave girl?
Okay,
I think it depends, but I believe her current origin apparently is that she was bullied.
Okay, no, I literally opened the wiki page because I thought she was a Wonder Woman thing, but I wanted to check and make sure that she didn't originate fighting the Atom.
Okay,
because she's also commonly there, too, because they are both, I'm trying to think of a way of saying size fetish comic characters without saying it, so just moving ahead. In, the original biography, she is, a scientist who has, a disease and wants to, use Wonder Woman's, super essence or something to heal herself, and the experiment goes wrong, and she winds up getting her consciousness trapped inside a gorilla, and then later, either the gorilla becomes the giant human there, or she transfers it again into another body that has the size-changing powers.
Interesting! Okay.
Wow, okay, wow. Because I actually remember on the Justice League cartoon, they did do a joke where Giganta talked about, oh, here's me when I was younger, and they show a picture of a monkey or an ape. And so I was like, okay, so they did keep that out, but they just threw it in as a tiny little joke.
I think they've since retconned it, because they realized this might be questionable, so...
In the cartoon, they had it, I guess they implied this origin, but they just mentioned that Gorilla Grodd had turned her from I think that it was a chimp into the size-changing giant woman.
Oh, okay.
Which, given that it's intentionally, it is consciously used as a character point that Gorilla Grodd has a fetish for human women, that was very disturbing.
Oh my god! Oh.
Like,
Aw.
it is a persistent thing in Justice League that Gorilla Grodd dates human women.
Oh, that's true. That's true. It's very subtle, but that is true.
I mean, fair enough, but yes, let's not get into it. They dealt with it exactly as much as they should deal with it on the show, which was in a 5-second gag and then move on.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, pretty much. But I think they've since retconned that, so that way she was just somebody who experimented on herself, and now she has these size-changing abilities. Yay!
I mean, DC has retconned everything about 50 times in the last 15 years, so I feel like, there's no point in talking about retcons, because they're just going to retcon it again.
Exactly. Because, one character's origin doesn't stay okay forever, so that's what it is.
I mean,
except Peter Parker's.
Except Peter Parker's, His is the only one that does, somehow.
Well, even then, the movies, like the Andrew Garfield movie tried to tweak it a bit and make it... They left out the part where he tries to be a professional wrestler and just...
Well, he falls into an abandoned wrestling ring. So they did a nice twist on it, in my opinion. So...
Did he? I actually missed that bit.
Yeah, he falls like through a ceiling or something, and he falls into a ring, and there's like luchadors all around him, and he's like, "Oh, I should wear a mask. That would be smart."
And then Michael Caine tells him, "Mr. Parker, why do we fall?"
It's a Weekend Raw again. You were born to... You merely embraced the spider. I was born.
You merely adapted to the lucha. I was born in it. I was a man grown before I saw the outside of the ring, and it blinded me.
It fits so well. He is a lucha.
Oh, God.
Although not that version of him, so I don't know. But yes, I miss Lucha Bane. Now he's just gas mask Bane. Anyway, so yes, the DC universe being reshaped by Henry Cavill's departure. Like I say, it's the next, if I'm not mistaken, it's Aquaman, Shazam, and then Wonder Woman sequel.
I'm sorry. I'm just laughing at the idea that this is a very stupid thought of, what if in the next installment they make Superman have a mustache? But he's played by someone who doesn't have a mustache, so they have to CG it in.
Oh, God.
Well, they're never going to live that down, are they?
No,
they'll never live it down.
And it's so amazing.
I suppose I also could have done the joke that for The Witcher, they're going to have to CG a bearded mustache onto Henry.
Oh, God.
I know nothing, I know nothing about The Witcher, so I don't know if it's appropriate if he has a mustache or not.
Geralt of Rivia usually has a beard and mustache.
Yeah, he usually has a full beard and mustache. He's also usually like salt and pepper, so it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
But,
fair enough. Well, but as I say, it is hilarious that they made, like, it was clearly just one studio fucking with the other.
Definitely.
He contractually he has to keep his mustache, even though you need to do reshoots on Justice League.
Yeah.
He can't shave off his mustache.
Like, despite the fact that it would be far cheaper just to put on a fake mustache.
I know! Why couldn't he just put on a fake mustache?
I'm sorry,
that
for those of you who don't know, with the Henry Cavill was doing 2 movies, and they called him back to do some reshots for Justice League, but he had grown out a mustache for the other movie, and the other studio said that contractually he cannot shave his mustache. And they stuck firm to that point. There is no reason why they should have, except to fuck with the other studio and make them spend money CGIing it out.
The other movie was the Mission Impossible movie that recently came out.
And,
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, how many movies are there with Henry Cavill having a mustache? But and apparently it was literally in his contract that he could not shave his mustache.
Yeah, for some strange reason his character needed to have a mustache. Like, I don't know. The only thing I can think of is because he would have a mustache and Tom Cruise wouldn't, just in case people got the two of them confused, which doesn't make any sense, because, like, I'm pretty sure Henry Cavill has, like, 2 feet on Tom Cruise, so...
I'm sorry, I'm just imagining it like a gala. Henry Cavill and Tom Cruise get in a fight, and there's just one person with a gun pointing at both of them, and you have just the two of them standing next. I can't tell which one is which!
They're both just brunette white men, I can't tell!
And Henry Cavill is, quick! Ask me something only a man with a mustache would know!
He's got the mustache of power. Yes. They do actually kind of look alike if you squint a bit.
Yeah,
If you squint a bit and put Tom Cruise on a couple of crates, yeah.
Yeah!
Yes, fair enough. Yes, the height thing is going to make a difference.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe they were in like a sunken living room couch thing, so...
Yeah.
But no, so that just gives the idea that some Hollywood executive, like, thought to themselves, there's a chance they're gonna need him back for reshoots, and if they do, I'm gonna fuck them.
It's probably exactly what happened.
They will not lay one hair, they will not hurt one hair on my beautiful Mission Impossible boy's lip.
Yes.
Not one! This far and no further!
There's also the possibility that we are getting into somebody's fetish as well. That it was real. That somebody was like, "No, he's got to have a mustache
Forever.
No?
It's
What?
in the
Yes.
contract. You can never shave
Exactly.
it.
That's right. He's going to be CGI'd in all of his roles now that don't have mustaches. from now on.
Exactly.
I still have not seen Justice League, but I've seen the clips that make it look. I've had a friend tell me it's not that noticeable, but
it's slightly unnerving. Slightly.
Jesus.
I
I mean, it's not every scene, right? He did shoot some without a mustache, right?
Yeah, so it's for some reshoots, I think, but...
Yeah, it was the Whedon reshoots, I believe, that he had to keep the mustache on.
that is still a lot of the movie.
Yeah.
It would be.
It's just funny how, like, they did a whole CG one of Peter Cushing to play Tarkin in Rogue One, and just for some reason Henry Cavill with the mustache, with the major labia of the lip just slightly off, looks so much faker than the entire CG homunculi Grand Moff Tarkin. Like, for some reason it looks so much wronger.
Really, because the Tarkin was pretty bad. I thought, to be honest, I'll be 100% honest with that was one of my biggest problems with Rogue One was the CGI Tarkin, which I didn't feel was really necessary.
Yeah, it wasn't
really bad. Because
I thought it looked fine.
It wasn't the worst. Let's be fair.
I mean,
pretty blatantly CGI. I think. I don't know. I didn't buy.
Maybe there was some difference in showing, like if people saw it in 3D or not, because at least in the theater I saw it in, if it had not been told beforehand that this was CGI'd, I probably would have assumed that they had just gotten a look-alike.
Oh, really?
Well, the way they did Leia was a mix of CGI and look-alike.
Yeah, Leia looked good. She's basically in one shot, though, so you can tell they could do more work on her or whatever, whereas Tarkin's in 2 or 3 different scenes.
Yeah.
And he's pure CGI. That's the thing.
Because I didn't see Rogue One in theaters, so I've only watched it on my, TV screen, and I thought it looked fine. Like, you could still tell it was very clearly CGI, but definitely is not the worst I've ever seen as far as that goes. So
it was. I mean, of course, it's well done as a CGI character, but you can tell he's a CGI character, which is a little unnerving that he's supposed to be. I don't understand why they didn't just use take footage of Peter Cushing and just digitally tweak it a bit to make his mouth match or something. I feel like they could have done that, and more so, he could have been like a hologram every time he appeared. So they could have just made him a hologram, which would have made
hid
even
some
more,
of that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because he's not. Theoretically, you don't need him to be in the story. They just wanted to have an uber boss who wasn't Vader, it was what's his name, Krennic, the guy who's the real villain in that one. He could have just been It didn't even need to be Tarkin specifically. It could have been some Imperial functionary. Anyway, I feel like I have 1 or 2 issues with Rogue One because it's kind of and here's a cool bit that's cool and related to Star Wars, and that's pulling it away from the story in some ways. I'm not going to gripe too much about Rogue One. It's a good movie, but
we're also literally 3 topics off what we were talking about.
It's all good. We should probably move to the next one. To break it down, it's okay that Henry Cavill left DC. It's fine. The movies will still be good without him. The movies will be good with him.
Phrasing.
We'll see.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see.
The movies will still be without him.
Okay. We'll go with that.
I won't lie. I legitimately want to see Aquaman. I think it actually looks like fun. Personally, I think that could be where they turn things around. But we'll see. I don't know. And I like James Wan, who's the director. So I guess we'll see. But yes, it's all up in the air, and we aren't going to say one thing or another. But okay, so let's go on to the next one, which is well,
I gave a selection of 3.
Yeah,
so excuse me to choose from.
Which one are you feeling?
Well, I feel like I like the first and the last of the 3 that you've got. I think are irrelevant.
Well, I know about the last one. I don't know about the first one.
Well, the football. Yeah. Okay. So this is the article about. This was from. This is like a week ago that this article dropped. But it was. Basically trying to blame the Oklahoma City bombing on Timothy McVeigh being too obsessed with the Buffalo Bills and being annoyed that they couldn't win the Super Bowl, basically. That is the argument that, yeah...
I remember seeing this article, but I didn't read it, so...
It's honestly pretty ludicrous, and it is... In many ways, I'm a football writer, so I'm going to see everything through the prism of football.
Yeah, but
the rose-tinted glasses of football.
It's worth pointing out, this is not like ESPN. Oh, here's an interesting story about how much Tim McVeigh was into football and how this might have tied into like political things. This is from Political Magazine. So this is them
from Politico.com.
This is them. Hey, I think they might have been the football.
Yeah,
it was totally the football guys.
Yeah.
We should ban football.
And the framing of it is that they phrased Timothy McVeigh, again pointing out the domestic terrorist, as a once promising young Gulf War veteran.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, it comes uncomfortably close to apologizing for him, as if he wasn't, getting into white supremacy before he even went to join the army. Yeah, he was, it was, like, that element is weirdly sidelined throughout the article.
And this whole article has been dragged, and most people just, like, amazingly say, pointing out, it's like, just go to any lengths to avoid talking about the white supremacy issue. Yeah. Like, we will literally basically slander the entire Buffalo Bills, and you did this!
It's all your fault. Not the KKK over there. Totally not them. Not them.
I have to admit, I did not know the story of the Buffalo Bill. Not knowing anything about American football, I did not know that they had lost the Super Bowl by like a whisker 3 times in a row. That was pretty incredible. Like, I have to admit, I was kind of like, yeah, that would drive me crazy too. My entire knowledge of that is that.
Okay, so today we learned that Adam is like one bad rugby season away
from doing the worst in Toronto,
from becoming the Toronto Terror and raining down firebombs from a Zeppelin shaped like his own head.
The Hamilton Ticats had better win the CFL this year, or I will crush them. They better win the Grey Cup. with our bizarre football. I don't know anything about Canadian football either, but I know that the Hamilton Ticats are a team people are very passionate about. My ex's dad used to be a huge Saskatchewan Roughriders fan. And those are the only 2 teams I know in the CFL. And the Argonauts, which are the Toronto team. But yeah.
And you're talking about American football and not soccer, correct?
I'm talking about Canadian football. Like, it's what you call, American style football.
Okay. In Canada.
The helmets and the brown, but in Canada.
Okay.
CFL, yeah. Which is, I believe the difference is that our balls are bigger, and and the field is like longer and narrower. I think.
And there's special rules for if you kick a field goal and hit a goose instead. Those are the only
okay, I
changes.
see.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there are many geese that fly over
If
the
the
field,
goose is stunned, 1 point. If you manage to destroy the goose, 10 points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Flattening the goose is an old Canadian tradition.
If you
at the
can
end of
kick
the
the ball
CFL
hard enough that it hits a goose in midair, and the goose just fucking scanners explodes, that's 10 extra points. If there is just a crescendo of red rain and feathers, that is 10 extra points.
They scatter breadcrumbs on the field to attract geese for this exact reason. But anyway, yes, it is
one
definitely
of the game's most popular traditions, along with the halftime moose jousting.
Hey, we keep the moose off the field mostly in southern Ontario, anyway. I don't think you would be able to get down the field if there was a moose in the way. They're pretty damn big. I don't know.
And aren't they really surprisingly mean as well?
Oh, they're very mean. Well, in mating season. Basically, they say keep the hell away from moose in mating season because they just charge everything they see. And they charge cars and...
Also, cow moose when they have their young.
Yes. That's true. They're protective of their young.
Because they are giant and don't have to put up with your shit and know it.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're very big. And no, I've seen them and they've been very calm and they're just by the side of the road or whatever, so it's not been a big deal. But I don't know if you've ever seen the video of the moose running down. People are skiing in some very deep snow and a moose just comes charging along like a snowplow.
Yeah.
Like just blasting along. It's incredible. But that's what they can do, you know?
Moose just noping the concept of weather.
Exactly.
I'm glad we don't have anything like that in Jersey, right? Right?
No, not really. We have brown bears and coyotes.
Yeah. Not the worst of it.
And drunk raccoons, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. Raccoons
are angry drunks.
Yeah, I'm sure they are.
Oh, we've got lots of raccoons up here. That's not a weird one for us. Yeah. But anyway, so yes, this article kind of tries to blame football for...
Or, deflect the, personal blame and white supremacy onto, framing it around football. Like the world's worst sports movie?
Yeah.
I mean, granted, he actually does say in one of the paragraphs that his claim that he bombed Oklahoma City because the Buffalo Bills lost 4 Super Bowls in a row. That claim would be absurd. He does say that.
Yeah, but you still wrote the whole article.
I know, but then he goes on to say, but it's just one factor in many, and it's just kind of like. No, and I think the worst part is that apparently this is part of a larger book. At the bottom it says it's adapted from Boomtown, the fantastical saga of Oklahoma City, its chaotic founding, ... Its purloined basketball team and the dream of becoming a world-class metropolis.
Yeah, it's about Oklahoma City, but not the Oklahoma City bombing specifically.
Yeah, the book is. And I guess you have to talk about the bombing in order to talk about Oklahoma City.
Yeah, but technically not through the frame of the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a very strange way to do it.
Yeah.
If this is the insight that the book provides is football made him done it, then
I'm
not sure.
saying football made it done it, but I'm putting the two things close to each other so that it seems that way, because otherwise, honestly, no one would click.
Yeah.
Right, basically.
Yeah. But this guy, and I mean, I don't know this Sam Anderson is the author of the article, and I don't know his specific credentials, but he seems rather sports obsessed, so maybe he's a sports writer originally or something.
I mean, he's being published by an imprint of Penguin Random House, so he's apparently good enough to be working with them.
Well, But I'm just saying, like, when he talks about, like, it's Boomtown, the fantastical setting of Oklahoma City, its chaotic founding, its purloined basketball team, and the dream of becoming, like, that's apparently a major aspect of the book? I don't know. Yeah, so, I mean, it almost seems like he is looking at it through a sports lens through the entire book.
Okay, to be fair, with American Cities, the obsessive like, chasing of getting a sports team, that honestly is not out of left field for talking about it. Like,
that's true.
If you were talking about Miami, you would be talking about, like, the building of the Miami
Dolphins.
Yeah, the Miami Dolphins and all that. You would be talking about that with Chicago and everything. If you wrote a history of New Jersey, you would be talking about all sorts of shit related to that.
You'd certainly be talking about the Devils, if nothing else, because that is kind of our one good sports team.
Well, there's also losing the Jets and all that.
And somehow we don't have the Giants, but we do have the Giants, but we don't have the Giants.
The Giants will play in our Meadowlands, but they won't take our name.
Exactly. They're still New York, even though they're technically in Jersey.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that happened a few years ago, where New York ran out of space, so they don't know what the fuck to do. It's like, well, Jersey's right there, so let's build it there. That's basically what happened. So.
And, like, cities do spend literally irresponsibly huge amounts of money attracting sports franchises and building stadiums.
Right.
Like, it is seriously a huge fucking monumental thing. Like, akin...
Yeah.
It would... In fact, leaving it out would be like talking about Rome and leaving out the Colosseum.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. But that's still a bit weird to literally tie the Oklahoma City bombing specifically to. He was a Bills fan and he was annoyed. Like, it's like he wanted to talk about the Bills specifically.
And didn't know how to tie it in.
And that was the way he found to tie it in. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm trying to think what it would be like, but I'm not actually getting anything absurd enough. The closest thing I'm gonna be saying is, like, trying to frame all of, like, Gacy's murders through his career as a clown.
Yeah, exactly.
But
he couldn't make children laugh.
But actually, there was... God help me, I know this for some reason. There is actually, from other clowns, kind of harsh criticism of Gacy's clown persona.
Really?
Yes. Like, there was actual from other professional clowns, like, of his clown face and critiquing it, and pretty much saying that it's not a good face.
Oh my god.
Okay.
I don't know enough about clowns to know what is a good clown face.
No, this is entirely, like, inside baseball, but for clowns. Which,
God.
This is probably why I'm fascinated by the clown stuff, because it's clowns. But, you know, when it's your career and your art form thing, you of course kind of take it seriously. So there is a bunch of very serious stuff in clown culture. Or in, like, clown professional culture. So, like, of the very harsh criticism of the clown face there, of, like, no, you've completely ignored this tradition or this convention there, the angles of your makeup shapes are too sharp as to be off-putting.
Oh, gosh.
This was... Well... I swear to God, this is out there.
Yeah, and also you murdered people.
Yes!
That's another thing that detracts from your clowning abilities,
and also,
basically.
There was the murder.
I have a few notes. The murder. How do we feel about that? Could you do without it, really? Are you married to it?
Now that we've gone over your persona, the murder, is it necessary for the act? I feel you could do a lot better if you cut out the murder.
Screw you! I'm not going in for your corporate shenanigans.
I'm just saying, there's a reason why Bozo doesn't host the Hunger Games.
He hasn't made it. Well, he did, in a way, outshine Bozo in pop culture. You can't deny that.
Yeah.
Mr. Gacy, but... Yeah, it's somebody's mentioning Phil's mentioning in the chat.
Well, thanks
about
for making that depressing thing. See, you can literally be the most famous, successful clown in the world and still be outshined by one asshole shoving people in his crawl space.
Yup.
Yeah.
Feel
That's how
good
it
about
is.
your art, idiot.
Well, I don't know. It's true. There's not. Well, it's true. I can't think of a lot of like famous clowns in general. Bozo the Clown, I guess. Krusty the Clown, who is not even a real clown.
I legit can talk about more and also point out ones that are non-conventional clowns or basically use the clown skills or the clown act structure without using what's recognized as clown makeup.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, you can do that.
Yeah.
Because you
We
are
can't.
obsessed with clowns for some reason.
Yeah, you have a fascination with clowns.
Oh, and Ronald McDonald. Fair enough. There's a very famous
Red
clown.
Skeleton, Charlie Chaplin.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
Chaplin seems like one.
Right, right.
He would
I
make
don't
sense.
Yeah, I mean, okay, Chaplin's definitely shading into that. I don't know Red Skeleton. I didn't know he was kind of a clown. I thought he was a comedian, like a standard issue comedian.
Yeah, but it ties into it. The Marx Brothers.
Right.
Okay.
I feel like that's stretching the definition of clown a bit. I know that they're in the same tradition, but to me, if there's not
one,
at least a
it
makeup-
follows the august clown structure.
Mhm.
Which is an actual act setup, as does the Three Stooges, and actually a ton of other, like, sitcom and comedy things. So,
Okay.
but it just, like, a lot of the more modern ones simply do not have, like, the actual clown face or makeup. The Marx Brothers were close to that, because Groucho,
Right.
of course, actually did have a makeup face. His mustache and eyebrows were paint there, and of course, Harpo actually is very close to a traditional clown, just without the face paint, as was... Fuck, and I blanked on Harpo.
Chico.
Yeah, Chico, of course, also there.
Yeah. So Chico was a verbal kind of, guy who... Well, so was Groucho, but Chico was the guy who, mixed up his metaphors and, went,
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
the sort of clown structure, the base of the act they're doing is the august structure, or it's a three-clown structure, where you have typically the white face or the schemer, who is the person that is in charge there, and is the person that's going to drive the plot along and come up with the idea, the person in some sort of authority. And then you have, at the other end of there, is the august, which is more of the comedic or physical clown there, or the foolish one there, who either fails to follow out the white face or schemer's plans there, or like subtly sabotages them or messes with them. And then you have the counter-august, who is the intermediate between the two.
Okay.
And you see that very directly with the Marx Brothers setup. Groucho, of course, is the person in charge. Harpo is, like, literally a mute and with the physical comedy, and everything between Groucho and Harpo is done through Chico.
Right. And the Three Stooges as well, even more so. With Moe being Moe is their leader.
Yeah.
And Curly's the screw-up and Larry's the go-between.
Right.
That's actually... the Groucho... I mean, as you say, he's got the clown makeup, but he seems a little competent. Like, it seems like he'd be, as a clown, he'd be kind of a schemer who always fails, whereas Groucho was actually on the ball most of the time. Like, he was actually pretty good at coming up with plans, if I'm not mistaken.
It's like, remember that there's, like, it's not always, like, always necessarily his failure in action. That's kind of where, like, the details of the act come from and where the character comes from. Groucho's often successful at it, with, like, Moe is often unsuccessful.
Right.
It's just, it's the different twist on the same sort of setup. Charlie Chaplin's character, the Tramp, is, of course, I say of course like anyone else gives a shit, is a character clown, specifically of one of the hobo clowns.
Right. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I definitely see the clown linkage with Chaplin for
Yeah.
sure,
Yeah.
and he had the character with the mustache and everything. How does with the Marx Brothers? How does Zeppo fit in? That's my
Well,
question.
he doesn't. That's why he's dropped.
I couldn't believe how boring Zeppo was when I finally saw a Marx Brothers movie. It's just like, what is this guy doing here? He's just the dude. I feel like he was there because he was the semi-conventionally handsome one, so he was
Yeah.
almost like
They just had to include him just for that reason.
Yeah, I've also seen the August structure referred to as the schemer, the idiot, and the fool, and the sane man.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah,
that makes
okay.
sense.
right. Yeah.
Because you always need a straight man, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes with like I if I'm not mistaken, the Three Stooges sometimes had a normal guy too, right? Am I completely insane on that one?
No.
I think
you're-
it depends on the skit, but yeah. And
Yeah.
that fourth person would always change.
Yeah, that's right. Because actually that does make sense because the Marx Brothers are all zany and wacky. But so you could think they'd need a straight man, but not really. But that's just sort of everyone they encounter is the straight man.
Right.
With the Marx Brothers, right? It doesn't have to be one of their team. That's
Yeah,
Right,
but usually if it comes up, the counter August is required to be either the straight man or or sort of the long-suffering sane person who it kind of like is self-aware but has no position of authority to change anything.
Right. Yeah. Boy, it's how did you get so interested in clowns?
Okay, here's the thing. I literally don't know because there's the thing with like knowing this stuff. I literally don't know how other people have not absorbed it by osmosis.
Because this is complete. I mean, I know the references you're making, but this is all just completely new to me. That there's all this elaborate formal structure for clowning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Like,
then
yeah.
that's not going into like the European traditions with like the actual Harlequinades, which have a whole different thing.
Now, I actually do know the Commedia dell'arte. I know a little about that. That is actually kind of interesting to me. And then there's like mimes, of course, in France.
Which
and
also,
then
if I
there's-
remember correctly, the August structure somewhat grew out of the Harlequin and Perrault system.
Okay. Right. Because the Harlequin is, in the Comedian dell'arte, he's the guy who can sort of run in and, like, play pranks on people, and he becomes, like, temporarily invisible.
Yeah.
Not to the audience, but to everyone else. And then, yeah, Pierrot... Is Pierrot the one he kind of makes a fool of? Or
Yeah,
is that...
Perrault is
No,
the
Columbine's-
sad clown.
Right, yeah. And Columbine's the one he's in love with, right?
Yeah.
She's the girl clown, right? Yeah, anyway. So, yeah, there's a whole thing to that. But, yes. Yeah, okay, I could definitely see how it came. So it came from the Commedia dell'arte and evolved, right?
Well, yeah, it's like you can see where it's where like influences there and where these ideas come, and like this sort of thing starts up in like pre-vaudeville, and vaudeville took off from it.
Right.
And then there's like seriously, like surprising when I looked into it, clowns have written a lot about their fucking art form.
Yeah. There you
Seems
go.
like it.
I mean, Commedia dell'arte goes back at least a couple hundred years. and
There
it's
is
a
also
theatrical
somewhere in
tradition.
America, I needed to look it up, there is like an actual clown hall of fame
Okay.
Really?
slash
Oh, there you
clown
go.
slash clown history museum.
I was gonna
All
say,
right.
it sounds more like it's a clown history museum that happens to have a Hall of Fame.
Right, and I remembered because it came up in like a news thing recently that they had like saw that like there was apparently a contentious debate on who the original bozo was.
Really?
Really?
Yes, because
I didn't know there was more than one.
Yeah, it's like Ronald McDonald. It's a franchised face.
Ah,
Okay.
okay.
So there was like apparently in clown academics, this was a fierce debate over who should actually be accredited with coming up with the character of Bozo, and they had like dug up documents. Like they did serious research for it, and I like to imagine just like a whole fucking Dan Brown thing, but you know,
Yeah.
with clowns.
Oh my god.
A bunch of clown academics
Yeah.
sitting around sipping
It's
tea
a serious thing.
with their glasses.
And
yeah.
Spear Havoc in the chat has pointed out, and I do have to point, it's a trivia worth sharing. In the UK, and it's done in the US as well, a clown trademarks their face with a registry at the clown registry. Of which it's several, and it is stored in the registry as effectively their trademark of the persona by painting the face on an eggshell.
Right. Yeah, that was actually an article a week or two ago somebody was sharing around that was the thing. Yeah. And it's that's really interesting. And then that's just their why was it an egg specifically? Is there a reason for that?
So I looked into it. The honest thing is that it's tradition.
That's it? Just somebody decided to paint an egg?
Well, it's under the thing there that I guess, like, going back when they started under this idea that a clown should own its own face, which went surprisingly far back. It was probably, well, we could either paint mannequin heads or eggs are cheaper.
And eggs are cheaper.
Yes.
So,
Fair
that makes
enough.
sense. I mean, I only know about that because of
replenishable.
Discworld, because that's what the Clown Museum is. It's just all these
Let's
little
not get
eggs
on
in a row.
Discworld again. They do
Yep!
Discworld every week.
Every week.
Also, if we're being completely realistic, I have to think that clowns would have to think that, well, we could do it the normal way, or we could do it the way that's both practical but also absurd and vaguely creepy, and thus actually fits in with the whole clown aesthetic.
Yep.
So, eggs.
Eggs!
Yes. Eggs. No, it's pretty cool that they do it that way, honestly, and they, I think that's kind of neat. And of course, painting eggs is a tradition all through the world. So that's possibly tied into that as well.
Yeah.
I used to have, my family had some eggs, we're from, branch of my family is from the Ukraine, and they do these really elaborate painted eggs there too. So that were family heirlooms that were,
And in conclusion, that's how Bozo the Clown caused the Oklahoma City bombing.
City bombing, yeah. We've established that Kermit did 9/11, so now we know Bozo did the Oklahoma City bombing.
That's right.
Okay, well, let's move on to the last article, which was the talk of the town last week, which was that the Cosby Show actor, Jeffrey Owens, was spotted begging groceries. So apparently he Fox
like
the whole thing
a
about
peasant,
like a mere mortal. He had descended to Earth and was no longer. Yeah,
he is defiling and callousing his hands with labor.
Yeah.
How dare he?
It was a very gross article that they had to, and it was clearly meant to be like.
It was apparently first reported by the Daily News, which should tell you everything you need to know about that. And then Fox News decided to pick it up. Oh, the Daily Mail, sorry.
Yeah.
And which tells you everything you need to know.
Is that the British Daily Mail? Or
the British Daily Mail, because they'll just publish anything that they think is even remotely saucy.
Or some British friends I have call it the Daily Fail.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Apparently, it's a very right-wing rag, and this is that snotty. Not that Americans and Canadians can't be snobby, but let's face it, the Brits do snobbiness. Like no one else.
Oh,
this is clearly like.
Of course, our snobbiness is far above that of the colonies.
Yeah, it's grade A, top-notch snobbery.
And,
so decades of
then the Fox News decided to pick it up.
To generate all snobbery.
Well, but it was actually kind of cool because it spotted. As with the library article we tackled a few weeks back.
Right.
The pushback was actually really interesting.
Oh yeah.
Because it became people going, wait a minute, what's wrong with begging groceries?
Yeah,
and
right.
And there's of course, there's the attitude of, oh, how sad, he was a big Hollywood star and now he's begging groceries. But first of all, I don't think he wasn't like one of the regulars on the Cosby Show, right? He was he had a recurring role.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, he had a recurring role.
Seasons.
Yeah.
Right. And he was he was dating one of his daughters, right?
He was the husband of the eldest daughter.
Right. Yes.
So he had a recurring role and was featured fairly prominently through the later seasons, especially. But like you said, he's not one of the main kind of family members, I guess you could say.
Yeah, but he was. I mean, he was pretty much a like at a certain point he was almost in every episode, right, for a stretch. And more or less, am I wrong about that? I remember him being in a lot of episodes. But yeah, he was a and yeah, no, so he became a theatrical actor. He hasn't, he didn't get any big TV. I'm sure he was on TV, but he didn't get any huge parts after that. But so it's like he's still acting, but he needs to supplement it.
He's been on Always Sunny.
Right.
Oh,
exactly.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I probably wouldn't recognize him nowadays. But yeah, yeah, exactly. And then, so that actually is interesting because it reveals how, by most lights, he has not an unsuccessful career.
Exactly.
He doesn't become a, quote, star or an A-lister or a B-lister. But, he's clearly working enough that he's, he can get roles and stuff. And yet, he has to have a day job, which is interesting. It's like...
And when you're creative, you have to have a day job that is flexible enough so that when you do finally get a gig, you can go do the gig.
Right.
You know? So bagging at Trader Joe's makes perfect sense for that.
Yeah, I mean, it like a bunch of like other actors chimed in and said, like, people who were big now and said, it's like, did you think that like when we were starting out, or like when we were auditioning for things, we didn't have another job? Like, even after people have their first big role, they may need another job.
Right.
Like, I think Terry Crews says that after football, like, he was a big thing in football. After football, he had to mop floors before he could really get his acting career going.
Yeah.
Like, there is absolutely nothing bad about this, which was kind of the great thing about the pushback when that came around. So.
Yeah. And it is very like, I have to admit, I would have assumed someone of that relative stature, if, as you say, I mean, it's not like he hasn't worked in decades, he was on It's Always Sunny, so he's getting TV gigs and stuff like that, and that's still not enough for him to not have to have a day job, which is kind of eye-opening to me. Like, to me, that's pretty amazing. I would have thought that at that level, at least, you could basically do acting and, live at least a decent middle-class lifestyle without having to have something else other than acting. Because clearly people are returning your calls, people are casting you in things. When you're a real struggling actor and you're really trying to get a gig and you might get like 2 gigs a year or whatever, then sure, I get it. But that just shows you, like, it's not a high-paying profession unless you're... Tom Cruise or something.
Right, unless you're an actual A-lister. Not to mention, you also have to take into account he's also a black actor, so that greatly reduces the sorts of roles he could potentially get as well.
And, as people were pointing out there, it's like he had a period where he had a lot of work there, and then some work dried up, and when that happens, what are you going to do? Not, like, find a way to make money?
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Like, at the end of the day, you have to provide, and if doing whatever you're doing is doing it, then that's perfectly fine. You're not hurting anyone.
Well, you do kind of want to think, like, okay, he was on The Cosby Show, which was, let's not mince words, it was the most popular sitcom in the world for a stretch there.
Yes, it was.
And you want to assume that if you were a big part of a show like that, you would get some royalties, and they would be enough to support you for a while. But it sounds like he does not have any royalties, and he does not get part of that show.
Which
is not that
on
that
the
would be
contract. Let's be fair.
I mean, that's actually a good point. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, he must not get either he does not get residuals, or the Cosby Show, I don't know if it's in reruns anymore. Actually, maybe he did. Maybe it was like the case, very likely, that he was able to, like, live off residuals there, but it's like the Cosby Show isn't...
the sex allegations happened, and then that dried up all of the rerun potential that used to be there.
Right.
Or even just, you can only run it so long there, and then it stops being run. It's run on less and less channels until, I guess, finally you're just on Nick at Night. Or I guess you wait till Netflix picks it up there.
Netflix or Hulu or something.
Yeah,
but again, it still sort of depends on what was in the contract as far as that's concerned.
Yeah. Well,
because I don't know how that goes when it comes to rerunning episodes.
You've got to make. I know that you have to make some residuals if you're rerun. Like, if your image is shown on TV, you're going to get something. It might not be huge, but every time they rerun an episode of a TV show that you're in, you are, I believe, legally required to get some kind of compensation for that. So having a show that gets rerun a lot is going to be better than having a show that doesn't.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure I remember the Seinfeld episode where Jerry says he's getting all these residual checks because he's appearing in a Japanese game show or something, and there's a clip of him in a Japanese game show. So he gets like 12 cents every time they air it, basically. So it's that kind of thing. So, I mean, that does make sense. I think that would be a standard contract. Yeah, you have to get that.
I wish I remembered who it was, but I was listening to an interview. I think it's somebody who wrote for Doctor Who, and they were, like, talking about, like that, and they said that the residuals are always, like, a surprising windfall, because it got, like, I think he said there was, like, just got a check for $2,000 because something that I had written part of there was bought to be shown in the movie theater at an oil well in the United Arab Emirate.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it, like, talks about, because, when things like that, it's like, workers need entertainment, so, buy the rights to these movies. Or for copies of these movies to show for movie night there, and it's like, here's a residual from, like, OPAC there, I guess somebody's seeing it, or, like, here's a residual from, like, a Japanese, rebroadcasting.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I always understood it went down the line. It used to be. Things have changed now with streaming.
That was for writers, so that's probably...
Right. And so I know that Doctor Who is actually...
actors as well.
Well, Doctor Who was always a special case from what I understand. That I believe in England you're going to get better residuals as a writer than you would in the US necessarily.
I'd believe it.
Like I know that the guy there's a guy named Terry Nation who wrote the first Doctor Who. Speaking of Doctor Who, he wrote the first Doctor Who episode with the Daleks. And as a result, he literally got a piece of all the Dalek merchandise that's out there. So he did really well as the writer of the episode.
Not only that, but his estate continues to do well after that. It's actually a thing there that in order to continue the rights to use the Daleks, Doctor Who needs to have the Daleks appear in once a season at least.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And that's, like, he's clearly got a very good deal that I don't think an American TV writer would get with that kind of thing. Although it is true that if you create a character, like, I know that Peter Gould wrote the episode of Breaking Bad that introduces Saul Goodman, and he owns part of the character, which is why he was the co-creator of Better Call Saul. Like, for instance, so you do get credit if there's a character. And I remember we had the discussion about Voyager too, because if you guys don't know Star Trek Voyager, there's an episode of Star Trek Next Generation where Wesley Crusher is in Starfleet Academy, and his squadron gets into trouble because the leader of the squadron wanted to do a flashy flying move, and he gets one of them killed. So he goes to jail. And they wanted to use that character on Voyager, where he was actually going to be the character who became Tom Paris, because it's the same actor, Robert Duncan McNeil. And they were going to use that same character, and it was going to be, he was this disgraced hotshot pilot, but he was going to join the cast of Voyager, and he was going to redeem himself. And they changed the character. It was all virtually identical character, but he was a different name and slightly different circumstances of how he was put in jail. And it was basically because they didn't want to pay the writer of that episode residuals throughout Voyager, because they would have to every time the character was used.
Interesting.
So it was a bit of a sleazy move, to be honest.
Oh no, incredibly sleazy.
Well, that's not uncommon, because I believe that's the reason why Static Shock was invented for the DC universe, because they didn't want to actually pay the person who created Black Lightning.
No. Static was
yeah.
created... Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Ing. You probably know better than that.
Oh, I just had a brain fart, but no, Static Shock was created for Milestone.
Yeah.
Which was... which is... I'm trying...
Dwayne McDuffie, right?
Yeah, Dwayne McDuffie's imprint there that was God, I'm sorry if I'm forgetting. It was either a publishing or
it was a publishing.
Sub-publishing house that... I think it started as a publishing house and then became a sub one when DC bought it.
Yeah,
Okay.
DC recently bought Milestone, and they're not really doing much with it.
Yeah,
but
which is a
they
shame,
were
but
originally an indie.
Long story short, Drain McDuffie started on publishing house to promote African American characters and creators.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And
Or
one of,
diverse in general. I don't
Yeah.
think it was just African American.
sorry, yes, diverse in general. And Static Shock was one of, I think, pretty much can be said his most popular one from Milestone due to the TV show coming there and brought into the DC animated universe with the Justice League appearances and getting, and actually in Young Justice showing up as well.
He did?
Yeah.
I did not keep up with Young Justice, so I probably should. Especially the series is coming back.
Your thing of confusing him with Black Lightning is very interesting. Because
well, no, it's because there's a rumor that's going around that the reason why Static Shock was pushed over Black Lightning was because they were able to, they didn't want to pay the residuals for Black Lightning, but it was okay for them to do it with Static.
Well,
I mean, I'd think they'd still have to pay it to McDuffie's estate, though I wouldn't be surprised if he got screwed on that. But
exactly. So that might be it.
Yeah, but
the fact that he's not alive could have affected
Young Justice had a thing where one of the villain groups was experimenting with making new metahumans, and they had a bunch of teenagers they had kidnapped and were successful, which wound up being effectively the Young Justice version of the Super Friends.
Okay. Apparently, I'm mixing it up with Black Vulcan, who it was. Okay.
They actually combined Black Vulcan or Black Lightning with Static Shock for that one, and just made him Static.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's never confusing when they do that.
It makes sense in there, and this is probably really boring radio and will be cut, but it worked really well.
It's not boring. We're talking about superheroes.
Yeah.
That's what this episode should probably be called. Is just we talk a lot about superheroes.
Talk about superheroes. No, I still think this episode should be called "Ask Me Something Only a Man with a Mustache Would Know."
Okay, done. That's the title for episode 12.
Although,
something only.
Yeah, I think it might be that Black Vulcan was made. So, for, the Super Friends, so they wouldn't have to...
Right.
Yeah.
Wait, was Black Lightning created for the Super Friends? He predated that, didn't he?
Black Vulcan was created for Super Friends. Black Lightning...
Oh!
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
All right.
Looking up at the Wikipedia thing, yeah, it's Black Vulcan was created for the Super Friends... rather than using Black Lightning, which already existed and was basically identical, because DC was in a dispute with the creator, Tony Isabella.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Boy, it's weird. Yeah. So they didn't care about Superman, but they didn't want to give any money to Tony Isabella.
They kind of screwed over the creators of Superman way back in the day. So
I know that's true, but I also know that by around the time of Super Friends, they had made a better deal with Siegel and Schuster's estate, which was they were constantly. I mean, Siegel's group, especially, I believe, has taken them to court multiple times.
Yeah.
To try and get more out of them, which they deserve, obviously, because they were screwed over. But as I recall, the story was that in 1976, as they were gearing up to make the Superman movie, DC kind of went, well, you know what? Hey, what happened to Siegel and Schuster? We should look them up because they're going to be reporting on them in the wake of the movie, and they're going to be, there's going to be retrospectives on Superman. So they looked them up, and they found that Siegel was working as a file clerk, and Schuster was homeless.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh crap, it's going to look really bad if they find these guys. So, and I believe it was Jeanette Kahn who kind of said, and she also just wanted to do the right thing. She seems like a good egg. But she basically said, yeah, we're going to give them a stipend, basically, which they deserve for creating Superman. So they had them sort of straightened out a little by the time the movie came out. So from that, there was a bit of an ongoing payday from DC to those two. But, I mean, they weren't getting rich off of it, which they deserve to, but they were at least getting, like, an allowance, as it were. So they weren't completely broke, basically.
Yeah.
And I think it was partly contingent on, do this and don't tell everyone that we screwed you over, as the reporters are going to be nosing
it
around.
ends up being reported anyway, so so we know that they got screwed over, at least in their initial deal. But
well, Siegel, that's the thing. Siegel and then his family have had a history, I think, of kind of taking a deal because they were pressured in. They thought that might be the best they could get, and then they realized,
because I know that for a long time they were both told there's nothing you can do. It was all legal, so you can't fight it, and that's how they ended up in the situation they ended up afterwards. So
yeah, for sure. And just the fact that anyway, but they keep realizing like it's ridiculous how much money DC and Warner Brothers and everyone else has made off of Superman.
Oh, yeah.
We have to keep going. And so they keep going, wait a minute, we're not going to let it drop. And they did, as you remember, they do now own the rights to Action Comics #1, which includes Superman. So basically, nobody's quite sure what happened, I think, but the basic theory is that they're going to have to, DC has to pay the Siegel family a stipend to keep using the characters, or it has to pay them, whatever the right word is, a certain licensing fee every time they want to use the characters.
Right.
So,
which they gladly will because it's Superman.
Well, not gladly, apparently. but they will, yes. If they want to keep doing Superman comics and making Superman movies, they have to keep giving the Siegel estate some money, so that worked out more or less. And then there's the whole Kirby settlement, which is shrouded in mystery at Disney and Marvel. But his estate probably made out okay.
Yeah.
But I think they're literally not allowed to talk about it, so we don't know exactly how they did. But hopefully...
I'm sure it'll eventually all come out, because everything always does, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, I think there's literally a...
I'm sure that there's a non-disclosure agreement, but again... Everything always comes out eventually.
Yeah, right. So just, anyway, the point is that unless you're really top of the top in Hollywood, you can end up not getting a lot of money out of your creations, basically. You can end up still working your day job, which is pretty outrageous, I think.
I mean, there's a reason why so many, like, C and D listers in terms of Hollywood fare end up doing Dancing with the Stars, is because it's literally the best way for them to get their name and brand out there so that people care about them. Like, literally, it's the easiest way for them to do it. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So.
And that's why George Takei was on Celebrity Apprentice.
Yeah.
Well, Takei has really cleverly branded himself online as internet dad, basically.
Yeah, but
and he's also,
this was before that, I believe.
Yeah, it's before that. And I think also he kind of aligned himself with some Disney stuff as well. So he's been kind of smart about that.
Right.
About keeping himself relevant. So
yeah. No, it's and I mean it's sort of a shame that they have to do that hustle, but you would think that, you could go get...
Well, I think Takei has also done a lot of voiceover work and, like, theatrical acting, like you said, so...
Yeah.
But dear God, did this get depressing, didn't it?
Yeah.
It happens. Well, I mean...
But I mean...
It's kind of a depressing topic, let's be fair, but...
Yeah.
You do
as
what you
I
gotta.
Say, it did introduce, it sort of introduces a discussion where they're like, why, let's not look down on someone for doing an honest day's work, as well as acting, because he is continuing to act. And again, it's actually, it's a little messed up that they did it about him. It's like, we caught him begging groceries. Like, yeah, but he's still working. It's not like this is the end of his career. He's still working, but he's also doing an honest day's work. And that's literally, from what I see, Jeffrey Owens has been doing interviews. This has probably really helped him, really.
Oh, yeah.
Ironically enough, yeah.
Yeah, and he's gone out and he said, like, we need to stop shaming people for doing work which needs to be done, which, that's something you would not want to go without someone sweeping your floors and bagging your groceries and picking up your garbage, and yet we look down on people like that, and it makes no sense. Somebody was saying on Twitter the other day, it's like, garbage men, we talk about, salute the troops, garbage men have probably saved more lives than any soldier. That's absolutely a fundamental component of modern life that we could not have without it. Somebody else mentioned something about how they had a hospital and the janitorial staff went on strike, and within 24 hours they were freaking out and just completely unable to function. Because you can't have a hospital running without the cleaning staff, right? It's just impossible.
Yeah.
You know? And yet we kind of go, oh well, he's a janitor and he used to be a Hollywood star. And I think Jeffrey Owens said this as well. It's like, not a janitor, sorry, he's bagging groceries, but still he says, like, what's wrong with bagging groceries? I'm not ashamed to be bagging groceries. I work. That's part of my job. And I also get to be an actor, and I'm actually doing really well. But why are we stigmatizing bagging groceries? Do you want to bag your own groceries? Do you want to, grow your own food? Because otherwise I'm part of the supply chain that gives you food.
Yep.
So that you can survive.
Oh my God, can you imagine the types of people who would actually have to live on a farm?
Yeah. Oh,
and if they wanted to eat roast chicken, go out and get the chicken and kill the chicken and defeather the chicken and
chop the chicken's head off and pluck the feathers.
Yep.
And that's maybe we should all do that at one point in our life. That should be mandatory, that you go out and live on a farm for a week and you make all your own food. and then you have to sweep floors for a week, and then you go you come back and you never again complain about
any of that stuff.
Any role that you might have to fill. But it's a good conversation, I think, that was promoted by that. So that was pretty cool. I do that. Anyway, so I'm going to be looking at... Actually, you know what? I'm going to look up on IMDb and see if Jeffrey Owens got any new roles out of that. He says he's apparently mostly a theater actor. So
which isn't that surprising, especially if he's working in Jersey. He's definitely, in all likelihood, doing stuff off Broadway. So...
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, is he actually he's a Jersey?
The picture was taken in
NJ Trader Joe's. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, in a New Jersey Trader Joe's, probably somewhere near the
Jersey
Hudson.
Actually has a decently sized local theater stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean to the point where the local theater stuff is bigger than just what the local theater usually implies.
Right, exactly. And that is in part because we are near New York and off Broadway, etc. So
yeah, I'm looking at his IMDb, and he did not ever stop working, and he is on TV shows all the time. He was in The Slap, which is kind of funny. And he's got some stuff coming out.
But let's be fair, even if he wasn't still a consistently working actor, who gives a fuck if he's bagging groceries now?
No, exactly.
It shouldn't matter.
Yeah.
It shouldn't matter. The man is working and he's providing for his family, and that's all that matters. Right.
I kind of feel like they wouldn't have jumped on him if he wasn't still working. You know
right.
what I mean?
No, I think they would have.
They would have. They would have. A lot of people brought up the fact that since he is black, that's part of the reason why they're going after him.
Right.
Over anybody else they possibly could have gone after.
Yes, it is. It is Fox News, and unfortunately, and the Daily Mail, as you say.
Yeah.
So, it tends to be, and again, it's almost like gotcha. It's like, really, you got him doing what? Like he's done something shameful? That's just so the tone. And I mean, I guess they're trying to frame it as like, oh, how sad. He can't make a living at acting. He has to bag groceries. But it's just still, it's the same thing. Like
and it's also just kind of like, well, that's really most actors? Question mark.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you're being nicer and interpreting it as a so sad thing. I read it as like, look at him! Point and laugh, children! Point and laugh!
Yeah. Oh, well, I think that is the intention, but they're trying to frame it like it's so sad. That's what I'm saying.
Like and they definitely wanted to have an undercurrent of, oh, how the mighty have fallen, but then it's also just kind of like, well, I mean, it's not that he wasn't on a big show, but he wasn't like the main character of a big show, so is it really that mighty, and did he really fall that far? And the answer is no, because he's still working. So it's just kind of like,
Well, like I said, I think it is, as I say, it was eye-opening to me to learn that you could be acting consistently on TV and still have to have like a side hustle like that.
Right.
That I would have thought that if you were even just as a very low-ranking character actor, but if you were consistently on TV, I would have thought, yeah, that's paying your bills right there. You don't need anything else. But apparently you do. So that's really interesting to me.
Well, it should be noted that New Jersey is surprisingly a very expensive state to live in, and a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah.
Especially since people talk about, oh, New York's really expensive. Right. California's really expensive. Yeah, those are very expensive places to live in. But Jersey is a surprisingly expensive place to live in.
Due very largely to real estate speculators.
Yeah.
No, seriously, the thing of people, like, intentionally jacking up land prices. Or setting a thing. Land development is another thing that's big in Jersey.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, it is expensive to live in Jersey. So it's not that surprising that he has to have a side hustle in order to stay in this area so that he can keep doing the jobs he wants to do. You know? So.
Yeah. But yes, it's it's on part of me. So I'm sort of torn between, well, he should never have to do that again, and hey, hell, maybe he enjoys doing it. Maybe he thinks, like, I can actually see the value of, if you're a creative person. I've often thought this: if I ever became wildly successful at podcasting or something, part of me wants to say, hey, I wouldn't want to, like, go and retire to, like, a giant, castle in the sky and never deal with peons ever again. Like, that would kind of hurt your creativity in many ways, right? It wouldn't, you'd lose touch with everyone. You'd turn into
Scott Adams.
Yeah, basically.
Yes, precisely. Scott Adams makes way more money than Jeffrey Owens. How fair is that? Cartooning being apparently one of the few creative endeavors where if you're a comic strip artist, you can lock it down and make tons of money off residuals. But
also, I am serious that you can actually track a severe decline in both the quality of the Dilbert comic strip and Scott Adams' seemingly emotional stability to actually becoming more isolated from him withdrawing from the workforce. Both because he's now cut off. Yeah, both because he is now cut off directly from what was basically the source of his inspiration.
Right.
And relying on shit secondhand, and that he's just apparently more and more, like, personally isolated.
Okay. That's interesting. So it kind of goes back to the whole Garfield thing, where it was originally a comic about being an unsuccessful cartoonist, and then all of a sudden, he became a successful cartoonist, what do?
And he got a whole team of people to basically do the strip for him, is what happened.
Yeah.
I'll give Jim Davis credit, though, because at least he picked his team generally well, and when it was getting dragged for being declined in quality, there was a revamp and effort to refix it, and that he has actually openly embraced and encouraged shit like Garfield minus Garfield.
Right. Yeah.
And to be fair, he's got this team which actually has a name. They're the Paws Studio, PAWS, and he seems to encourage them to do, like, there's all these Garfield-related weird things that were basically done by the team, and I've got to assume it's like that's giving them a bit more credit than you would normally expect for something like that. Whereas compared to, and of course, ghost artists and ghost writers for comic strips go way back.
Yeah.
Frank Frazetta got his start ghost writing and drawing, at least ghost drawing Lil Abner back in the day. So the guy who created Lil Abner was just out golfing, and Frank Frazetta was doing the strip for him basically for a while. And that's the kind of thing that does happen on this thing. But yeah, like if you ever saw the 9 Lives of Garfield, which was a comic and then a TV special, that was done by all the various Paws people, and it was kind of an excuse to just go wild and do whatever they wanted to that was very vaguely and tangentially related to Garfield. Like, that's the tie to Garfield is just they all had a cat, and the idea was that it was Garfield in one of his 9 lives, basically. That was the only tie that it had, but it was letting the whole Paws team kind of cut loose, and they got credit for it, So I'm assuming that, and there was another book or two that they did that were kind of weird little Garfield side projects. So he was kind of letting his team flap their wings. So yeah, give that for Jim Davis. He doesn't seem to want to hog too much credit.
And again, I give him major credit for officially licensing and giving permission for the Garfield minus Garfield.
Yeah.
That's very nice. Yeah. So it's cool.
He at least has a sense of humor about things, if nothing else.
Right.
So.
But yeah, as I was saying, it's just I can think of so many people and they became famous and and I think that's something creative people worry about too, is that they're going to become famous and never going to be able to, write again because they've completely lost touch with what it is to actually go out and live and be a normal human being, because they're living in a mansion surrounded by caviar or whatever.
So here's the really surreal thing. There are interview quotes from Scott Adams of basically him being talking about how he's afraid that he's going to become what he has become today.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Didn't he also get a divorce, Scott Adams?
He did not get a divorce. God, how do I know this fucking bullshit? This and clowns.
Well,
I guess
you have a rivalry with...
This falls under clowns. Let's put it this way. He was engaged, and a marriage and a wedding never happened.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, okay.
And I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean it happens because of cartoons, but,
No.
No, fair enough, let's not speculate about his personal life, but you kind of feel like, that...
But I feel like it's fair for at least me to speculate on my personal life.
Yeah.
Because Scott Adams has publicly speculated on my personal life on Twitter.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's true. For some bizarre reason, he decided to single you out for no other reason than because you might have said something kind of bad about him once, but...
Yeah, he Ing and Scott Adams had a online beef for briefly.
Yeah.
And Adams did go after him personally. And basically he went, well, you're the same thing as this article that we're talking about. It's like, if you're unsuccessful.
Yeah.
Like, that was his attack, right?
Yeah,
and it's just like,
pretty much.
Yeah.
I remember it. And it's just kind of like, okay, I'm unsuccessful, what do?
I mean, just the fact that, it's such a fluke. I mean, I feel like even early Scott Adams would have acknowledged that. He never pretended he could draw very well.
Oh yeah, definitely not.
Yeah.
and it's just a complete fluke that he succeeded and, someone else doesn't. I mean, hey, you're just starting out, so we're going to see. But, that's the other thing. Like, he's a well-established lunatic. You're attacking someone who's just starting their career. It's kind of like, what are you even? If you're even going to compare yourself to that, that's actually kind of pathetic.
Oh yeah.
Because it's like you're blustering over. You're at the end of the finish line and you're yelling at someone who just heard the starting gun, basically. Of course, you're technically doing better, but how insecure are you if that's your point of comparison?
Exactly.
Anyway. So.
Or the simple fact that there's definitely people who don't even know who the hell Scott Adams is.
That's true. A lot of people
care. At this point.
In some sense, to give some credit of fairness, if I'm remembering correctly, of the thing that he got mad at me for, because this was when he was really supporting Trump, and I might have shared around the fake Dilbert cartoon somebody did about Dilbert getting fired for being photographed at the Charlottesville marches.
Right.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, he's got some really... He gets ridiculous because he said, well, if Trump ever turns to fascism, I'll be the first one protesting him. And then people start saying...
He might have also been mad at me for asking if he's committed to that yet on a couple of occasions.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I'm not going to admit that there wasn't some sense of me trolling him to begin with this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well...
That's fine.
In the sense of full disclosure.
Yes, fair enough. But, I mean... He's been operating in very bad faith for a while, I think. Anyway. I think we should wrap it up. We're past an hour and a half here, so we're getting to the end of where we usually go for these things. Any final thoughts on... Does Scott Adams need a man with a mustache to straighten him out? Is that...
Probably. Probably. Mustaches on everyone. That'll make the world a better place.
It's true.
Oh, and we can tie that into our Waluigi update. There we go.
Is there a Waluigi update?
No, I was just going to say that we can use that.
Yeah.
Hey, mustaches, that's our 10-year-old.
Waluigi update. He has a mustache. He still has a mustache.
This is true. He does.
Okay, actually, I do have a Waluigi update.
Oh.
Okay, alright,
okay.
let's hear it. Let's hear it.
What is it?
Fans' passion for Waluigi is fantastic, says Nintendo's Andrew Collins. And the subtitle, money shot quote is, "Let's face it, it's funny."
Oh my god.
And,
Put the link up. Put the link up.
And this is from someone, Nintendo basically going and basically saying that, yeah, we too here find the stuff with people's passion for Waluigi and being snubbed in Smash as that it is amusing to us as well.
Oh my god.
Yes, we enjoy the memeability and the product, the youth demo that enjoys the ironic love of Waluigi. Please continue to do so.
The actual quote is, "I think it's great when something builds naturally, because, you know, as a marketer, when you have something that goes viral like that, it's brilliant. You can't buy that. You can't create it. And when the fans do something like that, it's amazing. But it's so good to see from a passionate side of things. And let's face it, it's funny."
Well, there you go.
I've seen some of the artwork people created, and it's fantastic to see their passion.
Oh, there you go. Well, that's a very good attitude from a marketer at Nintendo. There you go.
It's true.
I applaud him. Yeah, he is correct. And it's good to know they appreciate what they have, because you can't buy that kind of thing when somebody starts enjoying a character like that just organically. So
yeah, I can say that marketing agencies want to figure out what the hell goes viral and why, and there's no way you can figure it out. There just isn't. Things go viral and they go viral. That's it. Stuff
basically hits the funny bone in the right way at the right time, and you can't intentionally create it. I remember it's like a big criticism of the Sharknado movies,
right?
In saying that what's good about like the movies that Sharknado is trying to be like is that there is there's the earnest attempt behind it, and that anything funny is unintentional.
Right.
And that intentionally trying to create that is very hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think with Waluigi there's an element of the fans felt like they participated and helped create him, because didn't it all come out of, oh, well, if there's a Wario, there must be a Waluigi? Like, weren't fans saying that before they'd ever created a character officially, Waluigi? And
kind of. Like, apparently the first inclusion of Waluigi was in a comic, one of the Nintendo comics, probably in Europe somewhere.
Yeah, a European one, but Adam's right in that the appearance was basically the character that in comic the characters were wondering if there's a Wario, is there a Wario version of Luigi, and that's the first appearance of Waluigi.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, his presence was implied before he ever stepped onto the stage.
Correct.
So that's that may account for him developing a mystique that people were sort of going, well, there logically must be a Waluigi. Yeah, and so I think it's possibly true that that made the audience, it flattered the audience a bit, and they saw it come into life.
One thing I also think with the Waluigi is because he was initially effectively initially so hated.
Yeah.
That it
yes.
But it basically offered up the freedom that in terms of like, well, what can we do to characterize him and everything, that opens up a lot of freedom because there's no expectations to ruin.
Right. Yeah.
Which is where we got the glorious thing that's often cited as the start of his comeback into popularity for when they introduced his victory animation in the soccer game of him doing the crotch chops.
Yep.
Because we got like, there's a clear personality for our other villains and for the heroes where they can't be crude, but with this one, there's nothing like
Man,
to
who
actually
cares?
ruin by having him be as crude and as big an asshole as possible.
Yep.
Like that, and immediately people latched onto that's amazingly funny.
Yep. Yep.
There you go. Okay.
Yep. Not to mention, he's only ever in all of the side stuff. He's never been in a main Mario game whatsoever.
Right.
So that adds to the mystique of Waluigi.
And I think we mentioned it before that they've actually rolled with that into the characterization, into making him resentful that he's the least popular person.
Yeah,
exactly. That's kind of
he only
amazing.
ever go-karts and plays dancing games with everybody.
Well, eventually, there's going to be a Waluigi starring game. There's been Mario starring games, Luigi starring games, and Wario starring games. So you know there has to be
there are
Waluigi
Wario games.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. That's
there are Wario games. They're just no
Waluigi does not even show up in the Wario games.
Yeah. Like, that's how maligned he is. He doesn't even show up in his best friend's game.
That makes him an underdog.
Yeah.
People like to root for the underdog.
Yeah, that's why people like him.
And
he's like,
Nintendo has realized that and run with it. Like in the Mario Odyssey, you can find a Waluigi costume because you can get costumes for Mario, and the flavor text on it says that it's the Waluigi costume, and it's like, why, it looks like this has hardly ever been used.
What does it give you any perks if you put it on?
No, but it's
there.
It's just a cosmetic one.
Okay.
Like, all the costumes are just cosmetic.
Okay.
Sometimes in the game, having a certain costume causes characters to react to you and causes an event to happen, but Waluigi
nothing with
one,
Waluigi.
as far as I know, is just a cosmetic one.
Okay.
Right.
Doesn't cause any of the female characters to run away shrieking.
No. The one thing I do know is that when you get to confront Bowser in it, depending on your costume, Bowser's dialogue may change. And I believe in the Waluigi one, he, like, legitimately doesn't recognize Mario for a minute.
Who the hell are you?
Like, commenting, I don't think I've ever seen you before.
Oh my god.
And also,
like
if
it.
Mario's dressed as Luigi, Bowser calls him, hey, it's what's his name? If Mario comes in dressed in Peach's dress or wedding dress, Bowser actually compliments the dress and that Mario's looking fabulous and totally making it work.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It is a very
I saw that
it's
one.
a very cute game.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, people seem to love that game. Like I say, I stand by this. I put this assertion down. Someday there will be a Waluigi game. It will happen eventually. So look for that. Anyway, but let's wrap it up for the evening, since we're well past the point of everything here.
Okay.
So of course, I just did want to say all the links we've discussed in today's show are there beneath the video. You can leave comments. We do, if you're not listening to this live, we do live stream it when we record it. If you follow our Twitter feeds, I'm at Prankster36. Ing is at Ingdemit. And Avi is Avi at Avivayave. A-V-I-V-I-A.
Not even close.
It's okay.
V-A-I. Yes. I'm spelling it. A-V-I-V-I-A-V-A-I. Right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So there, just type it in. You don't have to listen to my weird Canadian spelling where I pronounce everything a boot right, but not quite right. If you like what you hear, please consider becoming a Patreon for one or both of us. We do have links, again, below, me or Ing. And Avi has a Patreon now, too. Is that not correct, Avi?
That is correct, but nobody has donated money to it, so it is empty, so I have not done anything with it.
Well, there you go. You can be the first to donate to Abby, and I'm sure she'll do something cool. She'll draw you something cool or something.
Yeah,
so
I need to catch up on the work for my Patreon.
We all do. I just put some cool stuff up there. If you don't mind me plugging a little, I'm going to have a new podcast launching very soon. By the time you hear this, it'll probably be a week or two. At the beginning of October, it's called What Mad Universe. I'm going to be working on it with Phil Rice. It's going to be about like weird pulp and sci-fi and some obscure pop cultural links that we dug up. So watch for that. We'll talk about it. I'll probably be hyping it on Twitter as well. Also, shout out to Jack Feerick, who wrote our theme song. And that's about all it is. So you can follow one of all of us for updates on Twitter, as I said. And to all of you, have a good night. Keep watching for that clickbait as it flies by your ear, and avoid it by all means necessary. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Goodbye to all.
Bye.
Night.
Bye-bye.